Hello, 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 and welcome again. Welcome back to the next episode of Danyelle Speaks. Today is like a really place of honor for me because this guy sitting next to me, I've known him for a while. Like, I didn't know how long we went back until he brought something up last night about him meeting his now wife. And I was like, wow, we've known each other that long. So I'm so happy. If you see my shirt, like, I'm totally fangirling right now because this is his product. Yes, I love it. And also his hat, which I think I jacked on the first tour, but I have those privileges because I'm a little sis. So without further ado, give it up for Mr. Idiomz, the professor, aka Grandpa Flawless on fleek. Yes, this is the man, the myth, and the legend. What's up, big bro?
Chilling.
Chilly?
Yeah. That's my story and I'm sticking to it.
All right, we're going to roll with it because we can honestly say the past week that we've been where we are, the weather has been so much better compared to what it could be. We have been in some very hot places, sir.
We have, and I was looking at the thermometer today for the event, and it's going to be nice. God
is a good God. Yes,
God
he
is good all the time.
Yes, he is. So, tell me a little bit. What's been going on with you here lately?
Well, what's been going on lately is the Extreme Tour.
Ooh.
All things Extreme Tour. Ooh. We've been on the road now, going on 3 weeks. Has it been that long?
Yes.
Oh my goodness gracious. We've been on the road for 3 weeks. Being on the road is the part that we live for, we ramp up for. But even before that, it was off the road.
So sweet. So with you, this interview is going to be a little bit different because you and your wife are on staff. Like some of the other artists that I'm interviewing, they're here for whatever their duration is, and then they get to go back home. But you and your wife have been on staff for how many years?
This is year number 4.
Year number 4.
Yep.
So life for you guys looks different. So explain to me, one, how did you come to find out about the Extreme Tour? And then we'll flow into when did you start to hear God say, hey, I want you to connect even deeper and go on staff? So let's back it up to how you first found out about the Extreme Tour. My
story about the Extreme Tour is pretty much like everybody else's. I got this random email. Wasn't sure it was real.
It's like, that ain't shady at all.
No, not at all, not at all. Like, hey, we found your music on the interwebs and we want you to be a part of this thing, tour nationally. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure. Caveat, at the time, this was 2015 when I got that first email. And I was struggling. I was in the process of, well, I think I had just released Renaissance Man. And
which is an amazing CD if you guys don't know about it. If you ain't checked it out yet, I'm telling y'all sleeping on life. You got to get it.
Oh, stop it. Anyway, I think I had just released Renaissance Man. I wasn't getting a lot of traction. And I was frustrated with the Christian music industry as an industry.
Oh, we're going to have a good conversation about that later.
Yeah. So I was at that place where I was like, okay, God, I'm done. And so I was literally ready to give up. I got the email. I shared it with Sharon. And she was like, what do you got to lose? And I think at the time there was an application fee and it was minimal. You know, I spend more on energy drinks than
yeah, Lord.
That's another conversation for another day too.
Right.
But she's like, what do you got to lose? You spend more on energy drinks. You know, if it doesn't pan out, you didn't lose anything. So I submitted my application, turned it in, didn't think twice about it. That was at the end of 2015. The early part of 2016, they were like, hey, why don't you come to Nashville? And I was like, oh, okay. Nashville, never been to Nashville. Like,
right.
This is interesting.
Could be good, could be bad. Don't know.
Could be bad, don't know. The challenge is, you know, we were severely in debt. I was working multiple jobs trying to pull it off. And even though the event in Nashville itself did not cost any money, travel expenses to get to Nashville.
Yeah.
That was the thing. So I had resolved in my head that I wasn't going to do it.
Because you guys were still living in Florida at the time, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I had resolved in my head I wasn't going to do it. So we went to church one Sunday. And as I've been told, I wear my emotions on my shoulder. You know when something's wrong with me. So one of our friends at church was like, "Hey, dude, what's the matter?" And just kind of matter of factly, I'm like, "Had this opportunity to go to Nashville, can't afford to go. I'm a little bummed about it. Probably confirmation that I should be giving up my music." Within a month, I had airfare, I had hotel, I had rental car, and I had money for food.
Wow.
All from the church body.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, God, maybe I'm supposed to go.
You think? Okay.
Yeah. So that was around February, March. The event, which is the objective, is held in May every year in Nashville. And so in 2016, May, I went to my first objective. And to say it blew my mind was an understatement. I came back from the objective renewed. I was excited. And as a matter of fact, without even having been confirmed for anything, I came back. I'm like, I'm going to Japan. I'm doing a month on the road. I'm going to do whatever I can to get on this tour.
You done wrote your own tour.
I sure did.
Yeah, I'm about to do this.
I sure did. And guess what God said? Pump your brakes. So needless to say, I didn't go on the road in 2016. Didn't go on the road in 2017. 2018 comes, and this is the third year applying, and I'm like, I'm probably not gonna. This will be my last time. Again, just trying to, figure it out. 2018 comes, I end up going on the road. I went on to the West Coast, started in Los Angeles, and did the last 2 weeks in October on the West Coast. And we could probably do an hour's worth of interview about what happened on the tour, but just to condense it for the sake of brevity, I came off the road and I knew that was my calling. Yeah. That was my calling. I knew that. I didn't know that I was going to be a full-time ministry with it, but I knew that I was going to be involved for the foreseeable future. Wow. And so trying to figure that out, just bought a house, kids were graduating from school, had one daughter going to college, another one was a senior, dealing with some other issues with one of my boys. And I get a string of communications from staff of the Extreme Tour. None of them knew that the others were contacting me. Hey, dude, God told me you're supposed to be a part of this tour. Pray about it. Hey, dude, I'm going to send you these podcasts because God told me you're supposed to be a part of this tour. Pray about it.
So basically you got ambushed by the Holy Spirit.
I got it. You know what? Holy Ghost power. But yes, I did. I got ambushed by the Holy Spirit. So that was in January of 2019. By that May, by the objective in May, we were pretty much committed. We had put in our notice at our corporate America jobs. We had resolved that we were going to sell our house. We took out all of our 401k. So put a pause right there, because I know there was a moment of intrepidation from you, like, yeah, this is what I'm supposed to do, but how am I going to tell my wife? Oh, you want to bring that up on camera? Yeah, we are, and I'm bringing this up because if any of y'all watch this, like, it's we talk about all the time. It's not all rainbows and Skittles when you say yes to God. It's not like I'm gonna say yes and then everything just magically falls on your hand. You got everything you need, and you're gonna take the world, because there's still like some underlying things that have to be worked out. So tell us about that experience of, I think this is what I'm feeling, but so I was terrified. Let me be honest with you. So Sharon is my second wife. My first wife passed away. And if I'm being honest, my relationship with my first wife was tumultuous, although I loved her a lot. But I didn't have the opportunity to be the man that God created me to be in that relationship. So I came into my second marriage a little timid. So I was terrified to go to my wife and say, hey, I think this is what we're supposed to do. But I also felt the Holy Spirit really tugging at my heart. And so finally one day I had gotten off the phone with Angelo Gonzalez, who at the time was the director for the tour. And I had probably spent about an hour on the phone with him. And, he kind of encouraged me. He's like, look, I feel like God is calling you to this. You feel like God is calling you to this, but don't do it if your wife isn't on board. So you're going to need to So that night, I was at work. I was in the parking lot. It was about 11:30 in the morning when I got off the phone with him. So I had the whole day to permeate and decide how I was going to tell my wife that I think this is what we should do.
You was like replaying and playing and writing the whole script in your head.
Yeah. So at the time we were carpooling, and I went to go pick her up from work because she was only 10 minutes from where I worked, and we drove home together. So I went to pick her up from work, and as we were driving home in Tampa traffic, I was like, babe, I think we're being called to the Extreme Tour. Actually, I said I at the time because I was still a little selfish, but I said, I think I'm being called to the Extreme Tour. So she looked at me without missing a beat and said, it's about time.
You don't say.
Because she knew. This is the same woman that 10 minutes into our first date said, I'm gonna marry you. Yeah, I put it on camera.
Has she been wrong?
She has not been wrong yet. So when she says something, I listen. Especially when she says God said.
Yeah.
Because I listen.
Yeah. So she knew.
She knew.
So next thing you know, you guys are selling the house, beautiful house that you just got, packing up everything. I guess the kind of reprievement of it is that you were empty nesters at that time.
We were on the cusp of being empty nesters. God's timing is so perfect because my last child that was in high school was graduating. And so she graduated in 2018, which meant in 2019, we were pretty much free to go. She had also gotten engaged in 2018. And so that kind of took the pressure off of us because her fiance's family stepped up to help take care of her so that we could go and do the things that we needed to do.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So now you're packing up, you're moving out. But staff tour life doesn't look like I think some people believe that it is, which is you're packing up, you're moving, now you have another big house, and you know you got all this income coming in, and you know. So how has that been? That whole transition of what does staff like look for an extreme tour?
Let me be explicitly clear. We are missionaries.
Yes.
So if you're familiar with the missionary lifestyle or anything, we're not paid to do this. We have to raise support, which means that we are totally reliant and faithful to God for our provision. All right, so let me start off by saying that, because what I noticed is in the first year, God had provided for us. He had gotten us out of debt. We had a lot of money in our 401k. Consequently, the house did not sell, but that we'll come back to that later.
Right.
But that was not a problem. So the first year that we were on the road, life was good because we had access.
Yeah.
And so we were able to be ballers, if you will.
Right. It's like, we got this. We got it.
But then there's life off the road. And so part of being staff is that we live in community. So we moved to Tennessee. There is a staff house in Tennessee. And everybody that's on staff lives in a house. And there is a, it's not a stipend. That's what they give to us if they had money. But, you know, the ministry doesn't have any money either. So there was a, we'll call it a program fee where for your first couple of years, you pay a certain amount of money to live in a staff house. That goes towards making sure that it's safe to live in. And
all the repairs, electricity,
exactly.
the bills don't stop just because you live in community.
No, and now we don't have a source of income. So not really paying attention in that. But I kind of went overboard on spending that first year on the road. So we get off the road and, we got this monthly bill that has to come in, and it's not a mortgage, but it's significant enough when you don't have an income. And so there's that. But then you're working 40 to 60 hours a week. And people don't understand that when we're not on the road touring, we're still working. Yeah. And we don't get holidays. We do not get holidays.
No holiday off. You still working.
We're still working because God's call is full time. And so even when the government and everybody else gets to enjoy a day off, we don't. So all that to say, when do I get a chance to go make money?
Right.
Absolutely. So anyway, I'm not going to go into that story, but just know that as a missionary, we have to raise our own support. when you're starting off, that comes in a little bit slow. Most mission organizations tell you don't even come out until you raise full support. The Extreme Tour is a little different. The Extreme Tour needs manpower. It always needs manpower because what we're doing is very significant. And so they were like, as soon as you can get here, get here. We'll pray on it and worry about it when you get here.
Yeah, yeah.
And I agreed with that. I felt that calling, and so that's what we did. So we came, even though we didn't know what the plan was. And I can say 4 years later, God has still provided. But yeah, it's not just, you know, touring for 4 months in the summer and then working for, you know, 8 or 9 months in the off season. It's 24/7.
Yeah. Yeah. And for anybody who's ever done any like behind the scenes planning, you know, it takes time. Now they're contacting hundreds of artists a year.
Thousands.
I'm sorry, thousands. So you got to take in the correspondence time back and forth, because just like the email that he got, just the email that I got and other artists received, you have questions. So as you're emailing back these questions, they're on the questions. They're also pre-planning for that next year of contacting, you know, the different churches and ministries in different cities and giving them the information to see whether or not they want to partner, and then getting the requirements together to bring the tour there. And it's nonstop. Like it takes a lot to plan this. It's not just a weekend thing. They're planning 4 months on how to take care of all of these artists that come out on the road and the transportation, and it's a lot. So when he's saying that he and his wife are working, they're working. You know, they're doing it. Paperwork does not stop. It doesn't. And in the midst of that, they're still fundraising. They're still fundraising for just the day-to-day provision, plus what they need when they get out on the road. So they're constantly working. Even being out on tour, it's funny because I always refer to your wife as a unicorn because you will rarely see her, because even while we're out on tour, she's still connecting with the next several cities. She's still connecting with the next several artists to see, hey, do you have everything you need? Are you ready to come out? Is there anything that you need? So she'll pop up every couple of days, and I'm like, ooh, we got somebody new, you know. But she's constantly working. But it's just that level of excellence that I can really say, you know, that you operate in. So let's kind of switch gears to the music. How long have you been doing music?
Wow, I've been doing music since I was, let's put it this way, seriously, I've been doing music since I was about 13 years old.
And what was your inspiration?
Well, we can look at it kind of two ways. So my dad was a professional musician. He toured internationally for over 20 years. And several people in my family were either classically trained or were pretty good at what they did musically. You know, I had a grandmother that was a jazz kind of scat singer.
Nice.
I know, right? Another
Nice.
grandmother that was a classical pianist. My auntie was a background singer for a funk band. You know,
She lived for the funk.
She lived for the funk. Yeah, that one was a little that one was a little local. But my dad, you know, I think my dad was my biggest influence. He, like I said, he was a professional musician, toured internationally with some big names for over 20 years, and then I fell in love with hip hop.
That's kind of easy to do. I see that. So question, I had asked another group about this, and I'm asking you this, and it's going to be from a different perspective. Were there moments in your household that your parents were like, man, I know it's in our blood, but I'm hoping you don't become a musician. I hope you don't take on this lifestyle for whatever reasons. Did you ever have to deal with that aspect of it?
I sure did. My mama, I love her to death, but she did not want me to pursue music. As long as it was a hobby for me, she was okay, because I don't think she ever seriously thought that I would be doing music full time. But as I started getting more serious and releasing albums and doing shows and things of that nature, it became stressful. And I think the challenge for my mom was that she was in love with a musician and got her heart broke. And she didn't want me to go down that same road.
So how do you process that? Like if you're feeling and you know this is something that you really want to do, like you have this passion, this fire for it, but then I guess you would say one of your main supporters is not supportive in it. So as a young man, how do you process that?
You know, that was a really dicey situation, because on the one hand she encouraged the creativity, but she just never wanted it to get to a certain level. And so for me it was always like, well, I'm not my dad. And for a lot of reasons, I didn't want to be my dad, because even though I love my dad and I appreciated what he did, he did not set an example of what a dad should be. Okay. So I knew better. I didn't want to be my dad. I was determined to be better than my dad. But I don't think I could ever get that through to my mom.
Okay. So how is it today in that same aspects? Because you've been doing this for years now. You've released several CDs, some EPs. You've had the opportunity to travel pretty much all around the country. I don't think there's a state that you have not been in, including as far as countries. You've even did some touring in Canada. So how does that dynamic work now that you've been doing this? You're in this.
I think my mother finally realizes that I'm a grown man. I'm still a baby, but I'm a grown man.
That's what I was going to say. No matter how old you are, you're still going to be her baby.
I spoke to her the other day, as a matter of fact, and she was like, I have resolved that this is what you do, so I'm okay with it. I think her biggest thing now is not to forget family.
Yeah.
Yeah. She doesn't want me to get so caught up in ministry and music that I forget that I have family. And that's legitimate, because I suck at communicating.
Yeah, you do.
Oh, I don't need you to co-sign that.
Yeah, you do.
Oh,
I
my
did.
gosh.
I did.
Okay.
I checked that box.
Okay. Can we edit that one out?
No
Okay.
edit, sir.
Right.
It's already done.
Very good.
Has that been a struggle for you?
It has. I don't even mean to put my business out there, but at the end of tour last year, we were in California. I forget the city we were in. It was our very last stop. And I called my mom after not talking to her for probably the majority of the tour, just to check in, because I felt convicted. I needed to call her. Oh my goodness gracious, the firestorm that ensued. I mean, 3 hours later, my mom then called me everything but a child of God. My baby sister was like, reading me the riot act. My other sister was like, you know how your mother and your sister is. And, my brother wasn't even trying to get involved. Yeah. I made a conscious decision at that point that no matter how busy I was, I would do everything. I would be intentional to communicate better. Yeah.
And in your defense, when you're out on tour, there's so much that happens on tour. It is easy to not communicate, not necessarily because you don't want to. Is that the schedule is exhausting.
Yes.
You're constantly moving. It's late nights almost every single night.
Yeah.
And when you're crossing in and out of time zones, your body is so thrown off. It doesn't know what you're doing. Especially when you on the West Coast side, it's easy to travel through several different time zones, and you're kind of zigzagging back and forth. Yep. So to those who are still they're in their time zone, it's like, well, why don't they call? Your body's trying to figure out what time zone are we on and what are we doing? Because when you go into that state, that city, the tour schedule is automatically adjusted to their time. So it's not, I get what they're saying, but in your defense, sometimes it's not as easy to do that connection with the tour schedule that you have. But yeah, I
look, for the record, I am always thinking about who I need to call. The problem is I'm thinking about who I need to call 1-2 o'clock in the morning local time.
Yeah.
Which I'm almost never. This is the first year that I've been back on the East Coast leg in a long time. I'm almost always on the West. Yes. And so even 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning local time is 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning East Coast time, and nobody's awake then.
Yes.
You know, so I could either be disrespectful and call at 4 o'clock in the morning, you know, East Coast time, or I can try to remember to call the next time, and that's where I dropped the ball because, like you said, we're so busy.
And then by the time we get up and we're loading, they're like in the middle of work.
Yes.
And it's everything just, I'm just saying, I get it. I understand. It is not as easy. But what I want to do real quick is that I want to take a small break. And I'm going to show you guys, this is kind of like wrap up / introduction to the tour life, like what his journey looks like. And this is a video that he put together. And it just shows a little bit of his travels and some of the concerts and some of the people that he meets. You just never know how you affect people. He has some people in certain cities that are like, if you don't come here and see me, it's it's gonna be bad. But he's built up that rapport with the people in that city. So take a look at this video, and when you come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about his music, about his career, about his goals, and then we're going to end on some new music that he has out. He has a lot in the pocket that he hasn't brought out yet, but I'm so thankful that he's at least released this one. So check it out, come back, we'll see you soon.
Say it with your chest out. 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 It's gonna be a problem when you say it with your chest out. Say it with your chest out. Say it with your chest out. They're gonna try to stop us when you say it with your chest out.
All right, you guys, welcome back. I hope that little clip just kind of gave you a better insight as not only the travel, just the impact. And I said this before, I remember coming out on tour and people at my job are asking me, they're like, so tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing. And I was telling them about traveling to different states and different cities and stuff like that. And I literally had a guy at my job say, why would you do that? Like, I didn't think people went out and did missionary stuff in the United States anymore.
Wow.
And it's just the mentality that ministry isn't needed here. I am running into that a lot because there's this interesting dynamics of people think that because you live in the United States that quote unquote religion is so force fed that everybody knows about Jesus. So he could not wrap his head around us willfully gone for months, going into these communities and just loving on them and shining the light of Christ within the ministry of the Extreme Tour. Have you found that you have come up against like any kind of opposition as far as people like, why are you here? Like, have you faced that at all?
So there are a couple of things that happen when you're part of the Extreme Tour. Yes, when you go into communities, people always ask, why are you here? Part of that is because we're going into communities that nobody ever goes to. These are communities that are dare I say, purposely overlooked. And so they're not used to people coming in. And when we do, they think we have an agenda. I mean, we have an agenda, but they think that it's unpure motive, like we're trying to, get them to join a cult or to sign their firstborn away.
Sign here in blood,
like Yeah, no, that's not our agenda. So that happens a lot. But externally, to your point, one of the reasons why raising support for what we do is so challenging is because it's hard to explain. Mm-hmm. Until you see an Extreme Tour event, until you're a part of it, until you, I dare say even an event, I would say until you've spent time on the road with the Extreme Tour, you really have no idea what it is. And trying to explain it, it just comes off as, another concert or a block party or something like that.
Right.
And that's not what it is. The music is really just a tool. Yeah. It's an avenue. It's a way in.
Yes.
But it is not the main thing. We could take the music out of the Extreme Tour and still do the ministry. And I think would be very close to as effective as we can be without the music. The music just helps.
Yeah. And I remember even when you were telling me about the Extreme Tour, you were like, man, they do the same thing you do. It's just it's more community driven. Because even when we connected and I was trying to tell you what we did in the prisons and the juvenile detention centers, like I could tell you, hey, we go in and we minister through the creative arts. But until you went in and saw how it flowed and how it impacted, it was completely total different. So it's like the way people imagine it in their head. Yeah, it ain't that. And speaking of that, what is this wall? Describe the wall, the artist.
Oh, we're telling all our secrets. Yeah, this.
Describe the wall, because it flows in line with your ideology of what you think the tour is.
Absolutely. So when you're on the Extreme Tour, one of the things we tell artists all the time is that usually about at the halfway point of your tenure, you're going to hit this wall. I need to point out that it's not just artists. It's staff as well.
Okay.
And it is proven true in all the 4 years that we've been out on the road. About halfway through, because the schedule is so whirlwind, you're just constantly going and going and going. The time to process things is delayed. So usually it's about halfway through when your mind starts to catch up to all the things that you're doing. And then it's like, oh, wait, what in the world am I doing here? Why am I here? Do I even belong here? Is this something that I even believe in? Mm-hmm. That's the wall. Everybody comes up against it. Artists, staff, coordinators, everybody comes up against this wall. And I think the thing that's beautiful about the wall is it's a decision point. Mm. It's a decision point. At that point, you can decide to pack up and run, but you'll miss what God has on the other side.
Yeah.
Or you can decide to endure and celebrate in what God has on the other side. And every time I have seen that once you get over that wall, 99.8% of everybody that gets over the wall is changed.
Yeah. So what was your wall? And what I mean by that is that what were the thoughts you were wrestling with in your wall?
I wasn't prepared to tell this story, but I'm going to tell it. And
don't worry, I wasn't prepared to ask this question, but I just heard, let's ask the question.
So here's the thing. Let me preface this story by saying to you that I am the type of person that seeing is believing. So if this did not actually happen to me, it would just be another really cool story. Okay? But my first year on the road, Las Vegas, Nevada, was our second city in. And one of the things that we do on the Extreme Tour is we do search and rescue. Mm-hmm. Search and rescue is where we actually go out into the community. We go to the people who we're ministering to. We don't make them come to us. They don't come to the building. We go to them.
Right.
And we go to them and we build relationships, because relationships lead to trust. Trust leads to surrender. Surrender is love realized. Mm-hmm. And so we were in Las Vegas, and a lot of things happened in Las Vegas. First, we got when we first got to the city, there was division in the team. We were at each other's throats. I mean, it was, as soon as you drove into town, you can feel the spiritual heaviness. Didn't know what it was, but you could feel it.
Right.
We get to where we're staying, and all the artists are just bickering and fighting at each other. Staff is fighting with each other and with artists. And it was, I mean, spiritual warfare like I have never seen before. Then we still had to do search and rescue because there's a plan. So you still have to execute the plan. So I go out with a couple of staff members, and we actually go to the wrong meetup place.
Wow.
And in the process of going to the wrong meetup place, I'm going to shorten this part of the story because it's significant, but it's not the major thing. In the process of going to the wrong meetup place, we came across this young lady who was obviously in distress. And one of the leaders that I was with at the time basically jumps out the car and chases this young lady down the street because the spirit is telling her she needs to be helped. I'm a former military guy, so when she jumps out the car in the hood, because we're in the hood part of Las Vegas, she jumps out the car in the hood, and she's a white girl. No disrespect, but
right.
you know, understand. I'm like, I can't let this go down. So I jump out the car behind her because now I'm in protect mode.
Right.
So we chase this girl down. We go to the convenience store. As we're coming into the parking lot, the young lady makes a beeline to a guy that's sitting on the corner. And the staff member wants to go after her, and I pull her back. I'm like, no, you don't want any parts of that. That's her dealer. And it was. Not only was he her dealer, but he was also her pimp. So anyway, she's out there. She's giving him the business, and we're in the store. And I'm holding on to the team leader, and she's fidgeting. She's like, I can't stay here anymore. So right as she said that, the girl is cussing out her dealer, and she runs out in the middle of the street, and she's like, you know, that's it, you know, I'm done, blah, 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 whatever. And the team member that I had in the convenience store was like, I'm done too. So she runs out. The girl runs across the street to the Jack in the Box.
Okay.
And she runs into the bathroom, and the team member follows her into the bathroom, and there's an interaction that goes on there. Bottom line is this guy, she was working. He had been in jail. He had just gotten out. He had only been out maybe a month. He went right back to the corner. That was her baby daddy, so she loved him. But while he was in jail, she had gotten a job. She was doing hair at one of the upscale hotels downtown.
Wow.
You know, her baby was doing well in school and everything. He got her strung up. And she was mad because she was strung up. And she didn't want to be, but she was strung up, so she didn't have any choice. And he wouldn't give her a hit. So in the process of them fighting, she broke her wrist.
Wow.
And she went into the bathroom to commit suicide. She was planning on overdosing on heroin. So our team members saved her from that. Not only did she save her from that, we prayed over her, and I saw her wrist get healed.
Wow.
I had never witnessed healing before.
I
saw her wrist get healed. Okay? So that was thing number one. And there's more to that story, but the healing was the first thing.
Hey, that's a big thing right there.
Thing number two, we go down to the Strip. Okay. I don't know why we decided to do search and rescue at the Strip.
There's plenty of opportunity there.
Well, there is. So we go down to the Strip. And as soon as we get there, there's this stench, and I know it because I've been around it before. There's this stench, and it's overwhelming. It's the stench of death. And if you've never smelled death before, imagine it multiplied by about 200 or 300.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it was overwhelming. It was burning, and apparently the same team member that I had to pull into the convenience store, she walks up to me and she says, "You smell it, don't you?" Nobody else on the team smelled it, just me and her. And I just kind of looked at her, and I didn't say anything. So we continue walking, and I'm like, okay, here's the plan, blah, 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 whatever. So we split up. There is, when we walk in on the Strip, there is a protester wearing a nun's outfit with a prosthetic baby bump, but it's cut open and the baby is hanging out. And it's talking about the freedom of a woman's choice, basically talking about abortion. And that image was seared in my brain. Then right next to him were two showgirls wearing dental floss.
Okay.
Taking pictures with drunkards. That was their job. And they're getting groped up and everything else. And you can tell they're uncomfortable, but this is what they're paid to do.
Right.
So that image is seared in my brain. Then there was a concert that was happening, and I'm mingling through the crowd. And as I'm mingling through the crowd, I noticed that the people don't look like people. I'm looking at their faces, and the only way I can describe it, there was a movie back in the late 80s, early 90s called I, the Jury. It had Robert De Niro in it. And basically, in that movie, he was working for a law firm, but everybody in the law firm were possessed by demons. And so whenever they would pass mirrors, you would see their demon face.
Wow.
And so that same image that I saw in that movie were the images on the faces that I saw and the people there. Mind you, I'm still smelling the stench of death.
Right, right.
So we weren't even on the strip for a good 5 minutes. And I'm just, at this point, I'm just bawling. And again, she comes over to me and she says, "What's the matter?" And I can't talk. And she says, "You see it." And I just lost it at that point because I realized that I wasn't going crazy, because I thought I was going crazy.
Right. Because if you haven't experienced that before,
No.
and that is not your norm, like it's not something that you grew up with or something, it's something that you see in movies. But some people, some people never experience that realm of literally seeing in the spirit and seeing what it is that you're fighting in the territories that we go into. And that's not just tour, that's just period. Demons are territorial and they're very real.
That's very real. And again, the funny thing is for all of my life growing up, I've always asked God to show me a sign. And I never heard anything. And so that was even a struggle with my faith. I believed in God, but I didn't necessarily believe that he was who he said he was, because he never responded to that one request.
Okay.
All right. So he responds. So I'm broken down and they're like, "Okay, we need to go." Because by this point, I don't know if anybody else saw it or what was going on, but I was so I was so out of sorts that we had to get out of that space. And mind you, as soon as we got out of the space, you know, the impression that I felt better. But we went to a Denny's, and we were in Denny's, and I was crying, and I'm sitting at the table with the leaders, and I'm like, I gotta go home. I gotta leave now. I gotta go. And before they can even say anything, I heard a voice in my head said, "You wanted this. I'm showing you what you're up against. Now, are you gonna put your money where your mouth is, or are you gonna run like you always do?"
Wow. Wow. Be careful what you pray for. Be careful what you ask for. Because he may not do it when you want, but you may not be ready when he does. So I just want to point that out real quick.
I wasn't ready. But as soon as I heard that voice, it was like, seriously, God? You know, and again, they were getting ready to try to figure it out. And I was like, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm supposed to be here. Then we just kind of talked it out. That's thing number 2. There's one last thing.
Okay.
And then I'm going to wrap it up.
All right.
So we stayed out later than everybody. It was almost 4 o'clock by the time we got back to where we were staying. And we were staying in a big open warehouse kind of place. So we get back. I go to where my sleeping bag is set up. And, you know, it's like, I'm tired. I'm ready to call it a night. Now, mind you, it's dark in there, but you know how your eyes adjust to darkness?
Right.
Okay, so I can see enough to get to where I need to go. As soon as I crawl in my sleeping bag and I close my eyes, I hear this god-awful scrambling like nails on the floor coming at me full speed. Pop my eyes open and it stops. But when I pop my eyes open, the room is pitch black. Like there's no light whatsoever. None. And I'm like, okay, bad dream, you know. I'm used to being in that sleep state, sleep paralysis. I'm used to being in that state. I've done that before. So I'm like, okay, cool, sleep paralysis, bad dream. I'm going to close my eyes and go back. Close my eyes. Comes back at me. Pop up again, open my eyes, it stops. I say hello, and I can hear it going backwards, going away from me. And I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
I'm looking around, and I still can't see anything. I can hear people snoring. You know, I know that people are there. I know that they're asleep. Nobody else is up. I get that sense, but I'm not alone. I stay up the rest of the night. And mind you, it's already
demons are real. Sleep paralysis is I know there's a lot of people who deal with that and they're not sure what that is. That is definitely a demonic attack, a straight, flat out demonic attack. So if you're watching this, you're like, man, this dude's crazy.
I would think that I was crazy too, and like I said at the beginning of this, if it didn't happen to me, I would just be like, cool story, bro.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
But it happened. And I stayed up the rest of the night. Eventually, the sun rose. What was interesting, there's a skylight in the building. And when the sun rose, it was very clear that there was a skylight in the building. I didn't know that before. And the sun rose and there was nothing there with me. But I was up.
Yeah.
Needless to say, the next night, we did our event the next day, which, you know, was cool or whatever it was. But the next night, when I went to bed, I could see the light from the moonlight, from the skylight in the room. It was actually lit up quite nicely.
But at that moment.
So I knew the night before something was coming to get me.
Yeah.
Something was coming to get me. So.
It was trying to derail you from what God has sent you to do, because darkness does not like light.
It does not. And that was my wall, yeah.
And when you step into their territory, they're like, hey, this is my territory. You got to go. Take that light with you. So it's a very real and present thing. And everybody's wall is different. Some people's wall is not as extreme, but everybody's on different levels. You know, everybody are facing different things.
Most people, when they hit their wall, they're usually tired, and they're frustrated because, let's be honest, when artists come out on a tour, they hear the word tour, so they have a particular idea in mind of what they're coming into. And this is not, if you're an artist and you've ever been on any kind of tour, and I don't just mean, you know, a couple of runs for a week or two in your hometown or whatever. I mean, if you've actually ever been on the road, this is not like a tour. This is very much a mission trip.
Absolutely.
And it's run like a mission trip. It's treated like a mission trip. And oh, by the way, there happens to be a concert in the middle of it. But it's very much a mission trip. You sleep in community. You're roughing it for the most part. You know, you're eating in community. There aren't hotels. There aren't green rooms. There's not a tour bus.
No tour bus.
Yeah, no. So a lot of times artists are tired and frustrated. Their perception of what they thought it was versus the reality of it is starting to kick in, and they're questioning their decisions. Even
though the tour is pretty direct, and they even in the emails, they're giving instance after instance after instance, the podcast that they send out, and they're talking about it. If you listen to it, they're giving you like real life, this is how it's going to be out on the road, because we don't want you to be shocked. These are some instances that things have happened. But it's when you hear that word tour, everybody's like, you know, I had somebody said, "Oh man, so you gonna come back with at least thousands of dollars when you get off tour?" And I'm like, "No, it ain't that kind of tour. I mean, I'll come back thousands of dollars less, but I'm not coming off the road with thousands of dollars, because as part of the fundraising process, we are fundraising, again, to get gear to give out to communities, because we're going into places that most people, they're going to bypass. They're like, we can't make any money there. We're going to keep it moving. Not that kind of tour where it is not a money-making tour, if that's what you have in your brain. And it would challenge you. It would challenge your walk with the Lord. It would challenge you to reevaluate where you thought you were with the Lord. So if you're looking for a challenge, okay, go ahead and sign up. Just be careful of what you ask for. So that wall's a prevalent thing, but since that time you've been, and I'll say this, you've been walking with the tour since then. but that doesn't mean you didn't have other walls.
I have a wall every single year. I have a wall every single year. So that was my 18 wall. The 19 wall was the wall of fitting in, trying to determine my place and figure out what that looked like. The 20 wall was COVID. Yes, we did go out during COVID.
Which it was a whole different dynamic because 20
yeah.
you had COVID, you had the George Floyd thing, so you had all the riots. BLM became really prevalent during that year, so that was a lot happening in 2020. So I could see how you could probably hit multiple walls that year. And trying to find your place, and I want to say this for different artists that may see this, that is a very real wall that I think most, not all, but most artists hits, because there's such a interesting dynamic of different genres of music on this tour. It is very easy to get caught up in I don't sound like them. And because the concert lasts so long, it's very easy to get caught up in, well, when I'm on stage, nobody is there for me. Because again, we're going into small cities and sometimes there may not be a lot of people there. So by hour 3, if you're used to seeing all these people in front and you're like the 7th artist, and then all of a sudden you get on there and everybody goes to take a seat, mentally that can do some things to you, because you're wanting that interaction, you're wanting that feedback. But yet still, some of these people, they've been standing for 3 hours already before you get up there. So mentally, you have to come to that place in your mind where, okay, it's not directed at me. They've just been standing for 3 hours in heat. Like sometimes we're out during the heat of the day trying to stay hydrated, we're sweating profusely, but still dealing with that, hey, where'd everybody go? So for different artists, you're hit that wall of thinking, well, maybe I'm not supposed to be on tour because it doesn't seem like anyone is interested in hearing anything I have to say. It seems like sometimes the energy is on that front end and maybe on the back end, but then it kind of drifts during the middle. So each person is hitting that, I don't think anybody's interested.
And last year, what was interesting, the wall that I hit last year was the spirit of competition. So there were a lot of really good hip hop guys out with us last year. And I found myself being very jealous, being very envious. And I mean, I have a song called Why Bother. You were in the video.
Yes, I was.
I have a song called Why Bother, but
I
was one of the kids. I was constantly checking myself because my attitude was like, why am I even bothering?
Yeah.
And what was really interesting about that is come to find out that these guys were looking up to me as the OG. I mean, it was mad respect, but I was so in my head that I didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
That was my wall because the enemy was attacking me in that one place where he knew I was vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like I'm old school hip hop. The Holy Spirit hasn't really given me any new lyrics since Renaissance Man. And, that was 7 years ago at this point. And so I'm still doing material from 2015 and in 2021. And I'm like, man, people going to know this is old. Well, they don't know because they don't know who I am.
Right.
But I knew.
Right. So is that kind of how you came up with the Grandpa Flawless on Fleek?
Man, Grandpa Flawless on Fleek came up in 20. A kid at one of our stops in Missouri, he was just a young kid. He had never heard my style of hip hop before. And he was just really impressed with my cadence and my lyricism. But he knew that I was older. And matter of fact, I think I was rocking I was scraggly, so I was rocking a gray beard and everything. And he was
now, he grayed very early in life. Because I don't want you to take a look at his beard and stuff and be like, man, he must be really. He actually grayed, in your 20s?
Early 30s.
Yeah, so he actually started graying really early. So don't let that fool you. But he was respecting.
Yeah, he was loving what was going on. He's like, oh, I'm gonna call you Grandpa Flawless because you on fleek. And I was like, oh, that's kind of dope. and I went with it. So
yes,
that's how that came up. And actually, last year I was being spiteful when I used it last year, but those other guys that looked up to me, they used it as a term of endearment. I could there was reverence and respect in it.
Awesome.
And that kind of broke down the barriers, and so now it's like I'm still Idiomz, but
yes, Grandpa Flawless on fleek.
Grandpa Flawless.
Y'all heard it. So tell the people how they can find your music, and if they want to sew into you, how do they find that information?
All things Idiomz / Grandpa Flawless on fleek can be found at www.idp-music.com. There you can find the music. I have a shop if you want to get gear, and all the proceeds from that go right back towards the ministry. I am a not-for-profit entity, and there's an opportunity to even donate and give a gift if you want to, and those donations are tax deductible. So you can find all of that information. Again, it's www.idp-music.com.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did. You know, he's my big brother, like, and I appreciate he looks out for me while we're out on the road. You guys, he and his wife, they really do. They look out for me, and I very much appreciate it. So going out, we're going to play a song of his that he duetted with another wonderful artist that we met out on tour, Tina. Just magnificent voice, and I hope this song blesses you. And if you guys have any questions, you guys can also reach him through the website. Ask him any questions. Social media links are on there. If you have any more questions that you would like to ask him, just reach out to him, and he's there, you guys. So thank you for tuning in. Appreciate the love, and until next time, you guys, this is Danyelle Speaks, and we are out.
Yo, walk by faith and not by sight, cause what we do in the dark will soon come to the light. And if we living without Christ, hey yo, that ain't right. Cause what the world is trying to tell us is engulfed in shady politics. Now I'm really sick of this. Ignorance and bliss is an excuse for us to act like Jesus don't exist. We walk around in our bubbles, avoiding trouble, thinking worse is gonna double as the thing that's gonna grant us grace. But it's by faith alone. There ain't a thing on this planet that we can do that's gonna take us to a home in heaven. It's by his blessing and his sacrificial measure that we even have a chance to see this treasure stored in heaven. But first we must accept them, not reject them in our heart. That's where it starts, so that our spirit is receptive, but the flesh is still deceptive, convincing us that his light is just perspective. So check the resurrection.
Won't be a slave to the pain no more. Won't be a slave to the pain. Won't be a slave to the pain no more. Won't be a slave to the pain. Won't be a slave to the pain no more. Won't be a slave to the pain. Won't be a slave to the pain no more. Won't be a slave to the pain. And he says, open your eyes to me, and the truth will set you free. He says, open your eyes to me, and the truth will set you free.
like butter, baby. There ain't no ifs, ands, or maybe. It's crazy how the blood of Christ, it covers us like gravy. He's the #1 blood spiller. But instead of praising him, we giving glory to the thugs and the killers. Praising money over God, ain't that odd? That's what we do. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. We're driven by the flesh is weak. That's why we seek to find the favor of our Savior. What could be greater than the living sacrifice that saved our life, Jesus Christ? Even though we weren't deserving, he did it because he loved us. So now it's time for us to grow a little wiser in our walk, a little smarter in our talk. We open up our hearts to let his light shine in, and in the end we can rest in the comfort that we're forgiven of our sins. So walk by faith and not by sight, cause it's the shining, y'all. Cause it's the shining, y'all. Check it.